Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mission 1820 and this week's episode of Have You Ever Wondered? If you're just joining us, we're in a series called Books of the Bible, and we've been giving introductions into each book of the Bible in just 5 minutes or less. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this week's book. Now this week we are in the book of Mark, or what we most commonly refer it to as the Gospel of Mark. Now, Mark is the second book of the New Testament, and it's also the shortest of the four Gospels, covering only 16 chapters. Now, although Mark is the shortest of the Gospel, it does spend more time telling us about the actions of Jesus' ministry than it does his actual teachings. What this means is that the book of Mark pays more close attention to the matters of human interest. Because Mark is one of the four Gospels, most of the events recorded in it, you're also going to see recorded in the books of Matthew and Luke. But Mark narrates them with much greater detail and vividness, and his fast-moving style really carries the reader kind of swiftly to that central theme and event of the Gospel, and that's Jesus' death and his resurrection. Now, as I mentioned, the book is 16 chapters, but we can still break it down into roughly two parts. The first part is Jesus' ministry in Galilee. This is found in chapters 1 through 9. Then we have the second part. This is Jesus' ministry in Judea and Jerusalem. And this is in chapters 10 through 16. Now, the Gospel of Mark, much like Matthew, didn't mention the name of the author anywhere in the book. However, the earliest witness to identify the author was a guy by the name of Papias. Now, he was the bishop of Hierapolis in Asia Minor, or what we now know as Turkey. Now, Papias called him Mark, an interpreter of Peter. But he also lets us know that Mark didn't follow Jesus throughout his lifetime, but later had just written down Peter's recollections, and not always in the proper order. But just a side note of interest, there are some who believe that Mark was that young man who fled naked while witnessing the arrest of Jesus. And you can see that in chapter 14, verses 51 and 52. As for the date of the writing of the book, many scholars believe that the book of Mark was actually the first of the four Gospels written, but there's uncertainty over its date. However, because of the prophecy about the destruction of the temple in chapter 13, verse 2, the book should have been written before AD 70, but there are others that say it was written around AD 64. So the final analysis is the book was written somewhere between AD 55 and AD 68. Now, Mark highlights the power and authority of Jesus, who's the eternal Son of God. Most of Mark's book, about 40%, is devoted to a detailed account of the last 8 days of Jesus' life, culminating in his death and his resurrection. And in many ways, Mark is emphasizing the passion and the resurrection of Jesus as the gauge by which Jesus' ministry should be measured. So why is the book of Mark so important for us to read? While Matthew's gospel portrays Jesus as the king, Mark is revealing him to us as God's servant. Jesus' work was always for a larger purpose. And this is a point clearly summarized in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, when he says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." You know, Mark filled his gospel with the miracles of Jesus, illustrating again and again both the power and the compassion of the Son of God. So with that, I hope that this introduction into the Gospel of Mark is going to help get you started. So God bless, and thanks for watching.